Hi everyone, it's Ann here. So I am going to show you guys a rainbow mandala today. Since this month we're doing mandalas and snowflakes. And you can make the mandala into a snowflake. I did a tutorial that was kind of snowflake colors for a mandala. But this one I'm going to do as a rainbow. So this one I'm going to do on a Pandora sized mandrel. I've already pulled out a rainbow stringer, rainbow twisty, sorry. And these are just the same colors that I'm going to be using in my mandala. When you use twisties, you want to make sure that you have a pair of nippers if you use a twisty in your mandala. So what I've got going here then for tools, I'll probably need some pliers. I'll definitely need some parallel mashers. They can be the mini parallels, or they can be the bigger parallel ones, but you don't want the huge ones, you know, that you buy in the beginner kit, because they're just, you can't control them enough. And you might want a paddle. You'll definitely want a graphite marver of some sort. You're going to want some poking tools. These are just some dental picks that I have here. I also have a razor tool, which is I have an X-Acto knife, and then a poking tool, which is a tungsten pokes here, and your mandrel that you're going to build this up on. Alrighty, so for your base, your inside base, you most likely want to go ahead and use an opaque color as opposed to the transparent on the inside, because you're going to have to clean it out. And you can, whatever you want to do. If you like the transparent, you can use the, what's that called, clear nail polish to make that shiny on the inside. You can do that with the opaques as well. So since this is such a thick mandrel, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that it's heated all the way through, otherwise I'll get bubbles in my glass when I lay it down. You can use any sized mandrel that you want to. I just find that I like these just to go on a cord, so because they're so fancy, they don't need a whole lot of bales and stuff like that. And since I'm going with the rainbow theme, I'm going to start with red as my core, and I'm going to lay down a fairly small footprint. I don't want my footprint to be too wide, because it tends to spread, and the narrower I can get it to begin with, the less it's going to spread. And now building up on that size there, I'm going to use a transparent. So I have a bunch of the same colors, close to the same colors, in my rainbow hue, in opaque and in transparent. And I'm just having a poppin' kind of day. It's not that cold here, so I'm not quite sure why it's popping so much. But I'm going to do a thin layer of transparent, so that's just going to be one wrap. I did my first one as 2 wraps, my opaque red as 2 wraps, just to give it a base, a nice solid base. Now after red, I'm going to do orange. And again, I want to melt these two together solidly before I move on to my next color. Now I'm going to go ahead and do orange. And again, it's just going to be a thin layer. I don't want to make this thing too ginormous. So just a single wrap on top of my previous wrap. got some orange transparent. Alrighty. And I'm just layering the color with the transparent. So I've got opaque, then transparent, opaque, then transparent. I'm keeping it in the same color. So opaque orange and then then transparent orange. It absolutely does not need to be that way. However you want to do it is fine. So I've got my orange layer of opaque and transparent now. And now I want to do opaque yellow. Does that. So I'm just going to take that big old clump off. And keeping my whole bead warm in the back of the flame here while I heat up some more of this yellow, since it broke off. Starting up where I left off with the broken piece. Now I have a big old lump of yellow here that I don't want such a large lump there. So I'm going to peel off a little bit of that. And if you find that each time you end your color or your transparent that you have a big lump at that end where the two meet, you can peel off a little bit of that with your tungsten plier or tweezers there. So what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to make sure that I'm keeping this on that nice small footprint, that it's not oozing out too much on the upper sides. And I'm heating it enough in between so that it will melt all together. All of my rods want to crack. So I'm just gonna see if I can't crack it off before it decides to, and apparently this one's gonna be a pain, so I'm just gonna melt it off. I can see a thermal shock line there. So now I'm gonna put in that yellow transparent. Now before I go too far into this, if I want to make any indents in it, I want to do that kind of now. I don't want to wait until I have all 7 layers or however many layers I'm going to have of glass. Otherwise my pokers and my razor won't go through that much glass without distorting it too much. So right now is when I'm going to make my first indents to make it kind of flower-like. Just going to make sure that it's as even as it can be to begin with. And then I'm going to pick a spot and I'm going to heat it up. I'm going to spot heat that spot. I'm going to use my razor tool and I'm going to press down as far into that mandala as I can. Okay, so right now I've got what looks kind of like a heart. I'm going to take my next spot, I'm going to spot heat it, and I'm going to push down as far as I can. And sometimes the razor tool wants to get stuck, so you just got to let it cool off and then it will release. Spot heat my next spot, push down as far as I can go. mince my razor tool to come out. And then I want to make sure that my razor tool has time to cool down in between. Pick my next spot, push it all the way in. And I think I've got space for 2 more pushes. And I do. I want to let that razor blade cool down a little bit, but you can kind of see what I've got here, I think. There. Well, let's see. A little bit closer to y'all. So it looks kind of like a flower now. Pick that one last spot to push down on. Alrighty, so now I have a flower all the way around in my first 3 colors of my rainbow. Now, I had last used yellow transparent, so that's what I'm going to fill in these divots that I've made. I'm going to go ahead and use that yellow transparent to fill those back in. Otherwise, what they'll do is they'll just melt back together and it'll be wonky looking, and it won't have that flower look. And since I want that flower look, I'm just going to heat up my yellow and press it into that crevice that I left. Into all of those crevices. Okay, now I'm going to even this out. I'm going to let it heat up so that that yellow will run and smooth out. Now you can already see that my footprint has gotten bigger because I pressed down so firmly with the glass that it kind of spread, and that's fine. That's why we start with such a small footprint to begin with. And if you feel like you're getting out of control or it's super wonky in one spot, go in there with your parallel mashers and kind of get it back under control. Heat your faces. Let that glass flow as well. Heat this other face, and that will take out any of the dimples and marks that we have from our knife there. Alrighty, so let's use our heat again and try and even this out. Alrighty, so I have red, orange, and yellow. Now let's go on to green, or now would be a nice time to put in my pretty rainbow cane that I made, a rainbow twisty that I made. So I'm just going to nip off the end of that. And when you're laying down your cane, whether it's a twisty or a super fancy cane, whatever you want to use, make sure that it's blunt on the one end, and you want to heat where they're going to touch each other. Okay, and when you're almost around, you're going to use your parallel mash or your nippers here, and you're going to nip off so that the 2 faces will touch. And you gently bring those 2 faces together so that you don't get any distortion of your cane. Now the colors may not match up completely, but you want the ends to match up. Alright, so now I've got my cane on there and the face is matched up nicely. So now I just need to melt that in completely. And what this is going to leave when it's on the face there is stripes of all the different colors. It'll be really pretty. And add a lot of ooh and ah to your mandala. Those twisties, because you're looking at it and you're wondering how on earth did they get stripes that thin? It's a trade secret. Alrighty, so I'm just checking my parallel mashers here, trying to make sure that it's not out of control. But you see how pretty that is? I hope you guys can see. You'll see in the final, in the pictures there for this month. I'll definitely share the pictures of these. Unfortunately, I can't share the picture on my video on YouTube, because for some reason I can't seem to upload pictures, and my videographying is really very minimal. I video it and then I upload it, so it goes directly from what I'm doing right here to being on YouTube. There's no real editing involved, because I've tried it. I've tried the iPhone, the iMovie, and all that, and I can do it just fine when my niece shows me how to do it, but then the second she leaves me, I cannot seem to figure it out again. So I'm sorry that I don't have a picture, so you'll have to come to the Facebook Lampwork Beginner Challenge page. That is where you will find the pictures of these, okay? So this is a medium transparent green. I think that will look nice here. And I'm just going to continue with my layering here until I have all my colors that I want on there. So I'm using a transparent over top of this rainbow cane, and I used a transparent under it because I don't want the colors to bleed, just in case one of the colors that you used in your cane is a bleeder, as it were. Putting a transparent between that and the next opaque color will save you from being disgruntled by the bleeding. Or sometimes if you put you'll get a reaction. So if you put transparent next to, not transparent, if you put turquoise next to ivory, you'll get a pretty brown line. And if you want that brown line reaction, that's awesome. But if you don't want that brown line, then you want to make sure that you have something that's not going to react, be that a clear or not a blue, not a blue transparent, because that will react as well. Okay, so I have green, so I'm going to use my next color, which is just green. This one is Blarney Stone. It's kind of a Kelly green. I'm going to make my layer of that. Now at any point you can use your picks and pull down little peaks, and that's kind of what that you would get that same look as what we did with the little flower look on the inside by using a tungsten pick. You can pull down. I'll show you how to make the little bubbles at the end. Hopefully our bead release on this mandrel will hold up long enough for us to do that. So again, you're just melting in between layers of color and transparent. You just want to melt the whole thing in. Okay, so now I have some greens, and I'm going to use blue next. So this is going to be a aqua. This one's dark aqua. And you're not trying to throw it on there. You want to make it as evenly applied as possible. Melting in the light or the dark aqua, transparent. You want to make sure your heat is hitting your mandrel every so often as well, so that inner, you see how, I mean, I work really hot, so you can see that the whole thing is glowing. Yet, even though I'm working really hot, I'm not letting it get out of control. It's easy to let it get out of control if you're working too hot. So every so often you want to go in and make sure that it's even. And now it's time for, this is dark periwinkle. It's kind of a bluish, purplish blue. I'll put a line of that. And also, when you're adding each layer, you want to start and stop in a different spot. You don't want to always start and stop in the same spot, because then you'll get, for sure, lumps and bumps. And then next up is my favorite purple, which is, actually this one isn't. This is the double helix. It's one of their trial ones, the RX 783, which is close to the Thea, which is their new purple, which is beautiful. I just am kind of picking up what's on my table here, using what I already have available instead of getting new rods put on my table. Okay, so now if you are getting, your disc is getting floppy, you just slow it down that heat, take it out of the flame, use your parallel mashers and just cool it down a bit, and it will stop being floppy. But these are not quick. These are not quick to make. They take time and patience and heat control. Practice, practice, practice. Alrighty, so this again is my transparent purple. Okay, melt that in, and then I'm done with that, and I'm going to get my Sim lapis, which is the purple that I like to use. I'm melting in that transparent purple in all the way. And I'm using my parallel mashers, or like I say, you can use a marver, whatever marver you might have. You can use that as your making sure your sidewalls are straight. Alright, the purple is on. Now the last but not least, we're going to add the purple lapis. And that will be my last round of color. Oops. Because the next thing I want to do is the end, which is going to be putting some bubble dots. Alrighty. And for the bubble dots, I'm going to use clear. And the only clear I have in my studio is double helix. Because that is the best clear. It can sit on my table amongst all of my junk, my other glass and stuff, and all the bits and pieces, and it doesn't get scratched up, and it doesn't get dirty and disgusting. So it is my absolute favorite. Alrighty, so I'm just going to make sure that my faces haven't gotten too wacky. Okay, it still looks fairly straight. It's not perfect. Some sections are definitely a little taller than, I mean, the circularness of the outer edge, whatever you would call that, is not perfect. But I am not really much of a perfectionist, so I'll give it a little run over the marver, but I'm not going to worry my pretty little head too much about it, because I think that it's going to be stunning even if it's not absolutely perfect. Okay, now to make the bubbles, I'm going to go ahead and put some dots of clear. And then I'm going to poke into those dots of clear and cover that with more clear. You could make a dot of, say, one of your lighter colors, like if you had a light aqua, or if you had like that purple that we used last, it ends up being kind of a light purple. But I don't want to add a dark transparent under there, because then I wouldn't see my bubble as well. So I'm going to add a dot of clear kind of at the tip of each of these petals that I have in my inner flower. Just to kind of continue that theme of the flower that's inside there. Okay, so now I have dots. Hope you guys can see that well enough. I have you guys above my head this time so that the microphone is kind of where my mouth is. So hopefully we won't have the same sound issues. But who knows? Okay, so let me get my poking tool. This one has kind of got blunt ends on it anymore. It used to be sharp, but this side is sharper than the other side. I don't think this is tungsten. I think it's maybe stainless steel. It's melted over the years. All right, so I heated up that clear dot that I just put in on the edge, and in the center of that dot, I'm gonna poke with my tool, and then I'll heat up my next dot and poke with my tool until I get all of these dots with a poke in it. Okay, they're all flat. They they've all got pokes in it. I'm going to use my clear again. And without melting out those pokes, I'm just keeping it warm. I'm just going to add a little bit more clear over top of those pokes so that I've created a bubble. Okay, now in order for those to be bubbles and not just indents, you want them to be complete bubbles. You don't want any misshapen. You want them to be totally round so that it won't affect the structural integrity of that glass. If it's kind of sharp edged dots and not completely round in there, it can break a little bit easier. If it's a completely round bubble, then it won't break as easily. Alright, so I'm just going through, and each one I'm adding enough heat so that that bubble inside turns into a round bubble. And I'm going over all of them again and again just to make sure that they all look like bubbles and not wonky. Okay, now I want to make sure I heat up this whole thing before I put it into the kiln. But that's what it looks like. I think it's going to be real pretty. Very colorful, if nothing else. And I'm going to heat it all the way up. Make sure that all of my chill marks or anything that I had put in there from making sure it was straight are out. And just heating up that mandrel just a little bit, making sure everything is warm before I take it off to the kiln. And like I say, you can see the picture of this little guy over on the Beginner Lampwork Challenge page on Facebook. I hope you guys have fun.